Good evening, and welcome to Virginia Rep's Bedtime Stories. Bedtime stories. They are magical, aren't they? So I'm going to open this book. And if you're ready, and I know I'm ready, let's see what we find. Tonight's story is Hansel and Gretel, as told by Maggie Bavilack.
Hi, my name is Maggie, and I'm here to tell you the story of Hansel and Gretel. Once by a great forest dwelt a poor woodcutter, his wife, and his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel. He had very little to eat, and then there was famine, and he could no longer get daily bread for his family. The woodsman said to his wife, "What is to become of us? How are we to feed our poor children?" "I'll tell you what, husband," answered the woman. "We'll take the kids into the forest tomorrow morning and light a fire, and then we'll go do our work and leave them in the woods. We'll get rid of them that way." "Oh, I can't do that to my children." "Then all 4 of us will die of hunger." She left him no peace until he consented. "But I feel sorry for the poor children." Hansel and Gretel, unable to sleep, overheard their parents' conversation and were upset. Gretel began to cry. "Don't worry, I'll have an idea. I'll get some pebbles and make a path for us tomorrow." But it turns out the stepmother had locked the door. The next morning, the stepmother had gotten the children out of their beds, and a piece of bread was given to each of them. On the way to the forest, Gretel crumbled hers in her pocket and stood and threw a morsel on the ground to mark their path back home. The stepmother led the children deeper into the forest where they had never been in their lives before. Then a great fire was made. The stepmother said, "Just sit there, you children, and when you're tired, you may sleep a little. We're going to go in the forest to cut wood, and in the evening when we're done, we will come and fetch you away." They sat at the fire until dark. Gretel looked around to see if she could find her breadcrumbs. But they found no crumbs. The birds that fly over the woods and the fields must have eaten all of their crumbs leading their way home. Hansel and Gretel walked all night long and into the very early morning hours until they approached a house that was built with bread covered in cakes and made of sugar. Hansel and Gretel were so excited to finally see something to eat. It had been so long since their last meal. They began to devour the house, the siding, the windows, the roof even. Hansel and Gretel kept eating and eating until finally they heard a little voice from the parlor. "Nibble, nibble, gnaw, gnaw, who's that nibbling at my house?" Hansel and Gretel didn't know what to say, so they just froze. An old woman appeared and said, "Oh, you dear children, come and stay with me. No harm shall happen to you." But the old woman had only pretended to be so kind. She was, in reality, a wicked witch who lay in wait for children. Then she seized Hansel with her shriveled hand and put him in a cage. "I will cook this boy for my supper, but first we must bake bread." She pushed poor Gretel out to the oven. "Creep in," said the witch, "and see if it's properly heated so that we can put the bread in." And once Gretel was inside, she intended to shut the oven door and let her bake in it, and she would eat her too. But Gretel saw what she had in mind and said, "I don't know how I'm going to do it. How do I even get in?" "Look, the door is big enough. I can even get in myself, see?" And she crept in and thrust her head into the oven. Then Gretel gave her a push that thrust her far into the back of the oven. Gretel shut the oven door and fastened the bolt. Gretel then ran to her brother to release him from his cage. As they no longer had to fear the witch, they went into her house, and in every corner there stood chests full of pearls and jewels. They thrust them into their pockets and ran home. The children ran and ran in the forest until finally the forest became familiar. They soon found their father's house and rushed into the parlor and threw themselves around their father's neck. The man had not known one happy hour since he had left the children in the forest. Their stepmother, however, had died. Hansel and Gretel emptied their pockets with pearls and precious stones. All their worries had come to an end, and they lived in perfect happiness. The end.
Well, wasn't that a great story? You know, fairy tales truly are magical. So why don't you join me again next week when we open this book again? You never know what we might find. Until then,